Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my Bricks Hangout series. Our endeavor is to trigger a buy and bring back consumer confidence in the real estate market. Today we have Mr. Sumit Dabriwala from Hiland Group discussing about impact of the Real Estate Regulation Act on the industry. Sumit is the managing director of Hiland Group and currently a member of the Urban Infrastructure and Housing Sector Committee constituted by the Government of West Bengal. He has chaired the Young Leaders Forum at the Indian Chamber of Commerce and the Retail Subcommittee of the CIIER and served on the National Infrastructure Council of the CII. I also welcome Ejayashree Group, Head Content and Advisory, magicbricks.com. She has been a business journalist for over 2 decades with the Times of India, the Economic Times, and the Financial Express. She forayed into research in the year of 2002. She is a regular guest columnist with a number of established media, including the Times Group and others. Without any further delay, over to you, Jayashree.
Thank you, Pushpa. Welcome, Sumit. Welcome, consumers. The subject that we're discussing today is a very important one. And in Sumit, we have a unique blend of both sides of the table. He works with the government to evolve policy, and he works as a developer, and he's representing the developer fraternity as well. So, Sumit, before we go on to the questions, I think one of the important things that we would like to hear from you is what is your perspective of the real estate regulatory bill and how it will change bring change into the Kolkata market.
So first, thank you for having me, Jayashree. Very, very happy to be here.
And Sumit, may I ask you to just lower your computer screen because we can.
Okay. Is that better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, super.
Please go ahead.
So, Jayashree, it's an important piece of legislation. I think that by and large, developer, I'm a little ashamed to say this, but by and large, developers have not necessarily conducted themselves in the most appropriate manner insofar as their relationships with customers are concerned. And so I think what we're seeing now is a reaction to those quote-unquote excesses that one has seen over the years in this context. And I think that and this is inevitable. What happens when you've got excesses for many years on one side of the spectrum, the pendulum for a bit tends to swing the other way. And so what has ended up happening with this regulation is that I think there is a framework which is somewhat more stringent than it otherwise perhaps needed to be. But it's a step in the right direction, and I think that it will very quickly begin to instill confidence in the minds of the buyer community insofar as the responsible and well-branded, sensible development community is concerned. It will be enormous amounts of stress on some of the less structured, less responsible members of my fraternity, but at some level I think that's good.
Okay, and now actually today when I look at what the consumers are asking, one of the important things is how will it impact me as a consumer? Would you care to explain to a consumer how the RERA bill is going to impact the consumer?
So I think the most fundamental impact is in the manner in which a consumer and a real estate developer will now contract with each other. So, developers will have to stand firm on their commitments insofar as delivery are concerned. Up until now, most developer-consumer contracts didn't even mention or clearly commit the developer to firm delivery timelines. There will be limitations insofar as what the developer can demand from the customer as payment up until certain thresholds of construction have been met. There will be clearly defined, and this was in the papers this morning, but there will be clearly defined penalties in the event the developer is delayed in fulfillment of his delivery commitments. So, broadly, I don't think the customer is, at great risk of finding himself or herself in a situation now where they've paid 80-90% of the value of an apartment, and they suddenly find themselves in a situation where most of that money has actually not been spent on the project, and there's very little recourse other than going to civil courts, and that, as you know, in this country is a very tiring and a very long drawn process.
That's right. I'll very quickly go to one of the queries. Pushpa, you'll have to sort this out. I can't see the queries on the screen. If you could just sort that out for me, please. But we've got Kalki from Greater Noida who says, after the real estate regulatory bill is implemented, will there be liquidity issues for the real estate developers, especially for the smaller players?
So the short answer is yes. Everybody, all real estate developers will have to subject themselves to much greater fiscal discipline. In the short run, this whole mixing of cash flows from various projects and the ability to be able to sort of use early cash flows from one development for new land acquisition and so on and so forth is something that really is not going to be permitted. So yes, smaller developers will have to either completely rediscover themselves financially, or basically they'll have to relook at their business fairly closely. I think it's going to be an interesting time.
And what about large developers? Do you think this has any impact on large developers? Are they also under a capital crunch?
So some of them are, some of them are not. The companies that, this is a fairly prolific conversation. Companies that, are very indebted, are stressed already. And in a stressed environment, to very quickly bring in fiscal discipline and fairly tight straitjackets of the way in which they can, operate financially is tough. So, they're going to have to face up to these challenges, but I think that overall it's good for the industry and it's good for the consumer, because it'll take the fear away. So there will be much greater confidence in the way in which developers and customers engage with each other, and I think that's really, really good.
Absolutely, that's a big relief for a lot of people, that there should be a atmosphere of trust between the developer and the buyer.
Yes.
We've got a query here. D.N. Pandey from Mumbai says, what are the negative aspects for the builder in the RERA bill?
So, good question, Mr. Pandey. There are fairly strong penalties associated with non-compliance of any and all the conditions that and firstly, let me say to you, it's not a bill anymore, it's an act. So it's
an act.
Yes. Legislation, we should in our heads learn to sort of, accept it and, recraft ourselves in order to be able to ensure compliance and do that as quickly as we possibly can, even as we wait for the detailed rules to come and even as we wait for the state regulators to be instituted. I think that it's very important for the real estate developer community to make itself compliant with this piece of legislation. So there are strong penalties associated with non-compliance of any and all of their permissions of their provisions. They are fairly stringent, so either fines that extend to up to 5% of the value of the project, or the relevant phase that is being registered, as the case may be. In the case of repeated default, there is imprisonment. So it's fairly stringent. But most importantly, I think that it creates a forum where customers can actually come and agitate their issues, and there is a framework and a forum where they can bring their complaints. So it's now not about consumer courts and then the follow-on litigation that unfortunately everybody has to deal with. There's a structured forum. Courts will not in the first instance have jurisdiction, and this is really going to be the first port of call, and hopefully will result in substantial resolution of, so not just to hear complaints, but resolve issues and complaints so that there is quick redressal of issues that, developers and customers may be facing inter se between themselves.
That is the operative thing actually. It's a quick redressal of disputes so that the buying process, there's a lot more harmony in the buying process. Let's take another query. We've got Gauri Das from Chandan Nagar in West Bengal, who says, if we were to talk about your projects in Kolkata, are you promising their timely delivery as RERA will be in force very soon? With or without RERA, Sumit, does RERA become a Damocles sword over your head?
So it's one more demonstration, and in this case, a very clear demonstration of the intent of the legislature. So it recognizes the fact that relevant sections of the industry, I won't use the word significant, but relevant sections of the industry have grappled with this issue of delays and other issues that RERA is addressing. And it creates a framework to address this issue of delays, which is penalties, interest, this and that and the other, all of which is good. Insofar as we are concerned, Mrs. Das has asked the question very pointedly. Insofar as we are concerned, and the short answer is that the two very significant projects that we are undertaking at this point in time, Hiland Greens 1 and 2, are fortunately about 6 months ahead of schedule as we speak, and we will therefore more than be able to deliver on time. I have to also mention here that we are one of the few projects in this country that actually is graded 7-star by CARE, which is a rating agency. It's a very prestigious rating. I mean, it's the highest rating you can possibly procure, and it's not just a financial rating. It looks at quality, it looks at timeliness, it looks at all of the associated issues, and there are, frankly, I can't think of another project in this part of the country that is rated 7-star by either CRISIL, ICRA, or CARE. So we're very fortunate to have received this third-party certification.
That's a big news for the consumers. If you're buying into the Hiland projects, what he says is go for the ratings, and these are independent financial ratings. These are independent ratings about the projects by a financial institution called CARE, and that should instill a lot more confidence. So what he's saying is that with or without RERA, he's actually focused on quality. Let's go to Jivananda Das from Kolkata, who says, I wanted to invest in a plot in Kolkata. Should I invest now or wait for the market to change once the RERA bill is passed?
So really, honestly, firstly, remember the RERA bill has been passed. Okay, so it is law. It now mandates that the state governments should constitute regulators, and that has to happen, within 1 year of the enactment of the Real Estate Regulation Act. So we have about 9-10 months left. Obviously in West Bengal, we've just come out of an election, so the government is, just getting down to the business of governance. Let me say to you, I'm aware from personal knowledge that it is very seized of this issue and is working very hard to be able to ensure that the relevant regulator is constituted in West Bengal as quickly as possible. Having said that, I don't think markets are going to change just because a regulator or a board is constituted. Markets are influenced by a whole host of other issues. I think the sentimental impact that the Real Estate Regulation Act had to have has actually happened. Markets have factored that in. Frankly, I think this is a reasonably good time for anybody to sort of buy. I think we've come to the point where sort of markets have bottomed out. They're very sane at this point in time, and I think that actual users, people who are actually looking to buy homes for themselves, should actually be out in the market, evaluating options and selecting, what it is that they think is best for them, best fit for them in terms of price and in terms of, sort of the brand from which, or the brand house from which they buy. My only advice would be, look at things like gradings, as I mentioned. Look at things like the way in which, look at the kind of institutions that have invested in these projects. So is there private equity? Is there is all of this there because the very presence of these elements in a project creates an automatic oversight mechanism that then very, very significantly increases the likelihood of timely, quality delivery and fulfillment of contractual and other commitments.
Right. Very quickly to summarize what Sumit is saying, very important, and I think consumers should keep this in mind. Look at whether there is an independent rating. Look at whether it is a funded project. That means that there will not be a shortage of finances to complete the project. And the third thing is check out the practices that the developer is doing. Are they over leveraged? Are they working according to capacity so that your project will be delivered on time? Very important thumb rules, and I think good to keep in mind. There's Puneet Soni from Delhi who said, will the RERA be applicable on all the projects where the OC completion certificate is not issued?
So short answer, yes.
Okay. Let's go to Sudhir. Will the implications of RERA bill increase the cost of construction, eventually leading to the rise in property prices? A lot of developers have been saying this.
Well, I don't agree. Compliance may have an extremely small, impact on cost, but in the context of the overall cost structure for a developer or a development, it's not even relevant. I don't think we should complain about the fact that there is a need for us to be able to comply with a new act. This really, more than anything, this is an aggregation of to my mind, two things. One, the framework of laws under which we as developers were working. In any case, those laws were written into many pieces of legislation. They have broadly been aggregated into one piece of legislation. And what it does incrementally is lists down what I would now call good practices. So in substance, it's what anybody with the right intentions should broadly have been sort of already doing, give or take change. So it's not like there's a whole new world tomorrow morning, and oh my God, it's going to cost us tons and tons of money to be able to follow these new rules. It's not like that.
Okay. We've got Nikhil Singh. As you speak, Sumit, I've got queries coming in. You just spoke about the cost going up. We've got Nikhil Singh from Chandigarh who takes it one step further and say our property price is going to shoot up with the advent of RERA. How will developers and buyers cope with higher values of lands and properties? Will the value of land and properties go up significantly for the developer?
So no, again, short answer, no. I think what is going to happen is that over-leveraged developers and unstructured developers will increasingly find it difficult to stay in business. Okay, so you are bringing discipline into this business. Discipline inevitably means a little bit of consolidation, a little bit of a shakeout. So guys at the margins, will going forward be somewhat disincentivized to stay in business, and they'll say, hey, it's just too tough for me to do this, let me move on and let me look at doing something else. And it's only the companies that are slightly better structured, not that leveraged, have a reasonable size context that you're so 5 years later, I think the real estate landscape will be very different from what you see it today. But I don't think there's going to have a dramatic impact on real estate prices. Frankly, I think that this is all good for the industry, and it's also very good for the consumer.
Yes, actually, I think it's a question of creating entry barriers so that only the serious players enter the industry, so that the ground rules are observed and the industry works on certain benchmark values.
So,
right?
So 2 words, Jayashree: confidence and transparency. Okay, I think that what's going to happen is that the relationship between the real estate developer and their customer is going to be transparent, and it's going to be a mutually, invested, reasonably confident, empowered relationship, as opposed to a confused, somewhat, sort of diffident relationship that one has seen over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Yes, right. We've got Rajiv from Lucknow who says, do you think that the provision in the bill for the state government to alter the escrow account amount to less than 70% will be effective?
So, well, I mean, these are extreme provisions. Okay, the normal threshold is 70%, which is, to my mind, a more than adequate threshold in order to be able to ensure that significant funds are not diverted, and therefore there is enough money that remains in the project to be able to complete it and to therefore fulfill the obligations or the commitments that the developer is making to the customer. It is only in extreme circumstances that the relevant state government will intervene and change that threshold. So it could increase the threshold in the event there has already been some wrongdoing and there has already been some diversion, or it could reduce the threshold where although I don't see that happening at all, but hypothetically it could reduce the threshold at in a situation or with a development where it's very profitable, and so therefore there is no need for 70% of the cash flows to be to remain in those escrow accounts. But frankly, I don't see that happening, and I think that 70% is actually in balance a reasonably fair threshold to stipulate.
Okay. We've got Snehalata from Pune, and this Sumit, the fact that this question is coming up in various forms means that this is something that a lot of consumers are worried about. Snehalata from Pune says, how much time will it take to implement the recently passed real estate law into our system? I have booked a property in Pune, but I have not done the agreement. Should I wait for the real estate law to be implemented in the state, or should I do the agreement now? I think you have answered it in some form. If you would like to just answer her.
So pointed answer, Neha. The whether or not you do the agreement today or whether you wait for 6 months, any provisions in this agreement that are contrary to what is stipulated in RERA will cease to apply on the date that the regulator is notified in Maharashtra. So you don't need to worry. You can enter into this contract today, and if 3 months later, or when 3 months, not going to be if, it's when 3 months or 4 months or 5 months later, Maharashtra notifies its regulator, any provisions in the agreement you sign that are not in consonance with the Real Estate Regulation Act will immediately cease to be applicable to both you and the developer.
Yeah. Okay. We've got Vibha from Patna who says, do you think allocating escrow account will speed up the delivery timing of the project? Does that happen, Sumit?
Yes, it will. So it will speed up the delivery time. A very large number of projects are actually delayed for the simple reason that the developer has taken the money that he's collected from customers of that development and used it for whatever other purpose that he to land, sort of whatever other financial engineering that the developer needed to do at that point in time. So it's 50-60% time. There are two reasons for delays. One is bad financial management, and two is sort of difficulties in obtaining increment. Unfortunately, that's the other big thing that RERA hasn't addressed. So the development community and by extension, customers continue to be impacted with this one issue, and RERA, hasn't addressed this.
Sumit, we are experiencing some difficulties in. Sumit, we are not able to hear you very clearly. Maybe if you could refresh once or something like that, because there is a problem with the audio quality.
Yeah, I think something's suddenly breaking up.
Could you, if it's not too much of a problem, if you could just repeat that last answer, because we could hear it in a very broken fashion.
No, go ahead. hang on. Let me just sort of.
Yeah.
Again, this.
Please bear with us, consumers. There's a small technical problem. We're trying to fix it so that you can hear Sumit's answers clearly.
So I think that it's, or at least I can hear fine absolutely now. Are you guys okay? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Now I can hear you. Please repeat that last answer.
So I was saying, sorry, which last answer? What was the question
Do you
again?
think allocating escrow account will speed up the delivery timing of projects? Asked
So yes,
Vibhash
I'm saying yes. I think 50-60% of the delays in any project are on account of bad financial management, and so therefore, insofar as projects like that, escrow accounts will certainly help in faster and better delivery. What RERA hasn't done, unfortunately, the way in which municipal corporations, municipalities, state governments give permissions to projects, and if delays are on account of the developer not being able to obtain permission incrementally from the state government and or the local our local body that has jurisdiction over the project. That's not something that unfortunately escrow accounts will be able to address, and that's a disappointment insofar as RERA is concerned. RERA hasn't talked about or addressed permissions at all, and that continues to be something that challenges this industry fairly significantly.
Right. And Ramanujam from Vellore, I think he would have answered this. This would have answered your query as well, where he says that RERA restricts developers from moving funds earned from one project to the other. Do you think this is good for the market, or will builders face tough times further? And I think he has answered.
Yeah. So short answer, yes.
Yeah. Okay. There is a query that has come. It's anonymous. That person doesn't want to give his name, but he says, "Do you think that RERA will improve the image of builders who are today seen as bad guys of real estate?"
So, well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm hoping that yeah, I agree with the lady or the gentleman, as the case may be, that yes, across the country and in a more general sense, the industry is not seen as a particularly well conducted industry. And it's important that legislation like this should come, and it's important that therefore the whole shakeout that I was talking about. So, not so well constructed developers, over leveraged developers, exiting this industry, consolidation taking place, will all contribute towards the image of the industry improving, and sort of generally the confidence that I was talking about between consumers and the developer fraternity building fairly quickly is what I hope.
Sumit, interestingly, we've got a few queries that are directed at you about your own projects.
Okay.
These are people who are asking whether what kind of ROI can they expect when they're investing in your projects. Clearly, they're investors and not end users today. There is Sudeep from Jadavpur, Kolkata, who says, "I have seen your projects and have some idea about the location. Is Maheshtala location good from investment perspective? Is there any issue as the project is in low land just on the banks of the Ganges?"
So I can answer the second question first. That's the easier one. It's actually not on lowland. This, as you may or may not know, was it was sort of the labor quarters for or the labor colony for Bata, and was built in 1938. So there's been a significant population using this land all the way from 1938. The levee that is built next to the river and now of course it's a beautiful promenade. It has been sort of there all the way since 1938. There's never been any flooding on this land, so sort of no issues on low-lying land and so on and so forth. As to whether it's a good investment proposition, well, I made such a large bet on it's a 262-acre development with a 25 million square foot development program. I bet all my life on it. So I'm sort of if it's not a good investment proposition, I'm in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got RL Tyagi from Noida who says, I'm a broker in Noida. Do you think NRIs and foreign investors' interest will be more in Indian real estate market as due to RERA, more discipline will come into the market? Yeah, and from the NCR market, which is actually struggling to cope with all the delays and the bad perception, this is a very significant query from a broker.
So again, short answer, yes, there will be greater confidence, but you must remember that, it's never about one thing. So it's never about, just the regulatory context. It's about, sort of, for example, in Noida, I mean, and I say this because not that I have any great understanding or insight of that market, but I'm given to understand that Noida has behaved somewhat differently from Gurgaon, for example, because there has been a certain perception of UP versus a certain perception of Haryana, and that's reflected in the way in which both pricing and overall velocities have behaved over the last few years in those respective micro markets. So honestly, it's not going to be any one thing that will suddenly change the context and bring in a rush of buyers. It's going to be, this is one of those incremental positives that will help if the overall ecosystem in which that development sits or those developments sit are already sort of on the mend or improving. But if the overall ecosystem is not conducive, then this one piece of legislation is not going to really be able to help too much.
Absolutely. There's Anil Nair from Chennai who says, what are the provisions incorporated in the RERA for foreign investors? Does the law promote foreign funding?
So RERA has nothing to do with foreign funding, so to speak. Today, equity in real estate development is 100% equity is permitted under the automatic route, and you don't even need to go to the FIPB. It's a simple, you can bring in money for real estate development from overseas, and it's a simple filing that you have to make to the Reserve Bank of India. Insofar as purchase of apartments or built real estate is concerned, you can, it's only if the buyer has to be either an Indian resident or a non-resident Indian, or at the very minimum, a person of Indian origin. Foreign nationals are not yet permitted to buy built real estate in India. They can invest in equity in a real estate development, but they can't buy an apartment in my development, for example.
Yeah, there is one more question that we've got about your own project, and I think I'll take this as a one of the last queries here. There's somebody who's asking about your Shantiniketan project and saying that what kind, is this a good is this good for end use or is it good for investment? It's an NRI who has asked this query.
So it's clearly a project that we've designed for people to be able to use and people to be able to enjoy. I don't see Shantiniketan honestly as a great investment market. It's about a certain unique context and a certain unique lifestyle. Shantiniketan has that lure for Bengalis like me. We've grown up, sort of enjoying that context and being fed that lure as part of our psyche. And so, I mean, it's a great. I think it'll be a great project to use and enjoy. I'm not sure it's the best thing to do from an investment standpoint.
So Poonam, you have to purchase that project if you think that the ambience suits you and you're happy with owning a property in Shantiniketan. But if you're looking at an investment, a return on your investment, you should probably look at one of his other projects which have a return on investment component as well. Thanks so much for joining us, Sumit. It was great having you here, and I think the volume of queries that are pouring in shows that you've actually touched a raw nerve. The consumers are worried, consumers want to know more, and you've answered it very ably. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been great fun. Outstanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.